she could potentially unite the populist left and the populist right. I think it was you who told me about the phrase that they're in the Republicans tend to gravitate toward her, and they're called the conservatives.
No, I did not mention that, but yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah, and so I was looking that up for the episode because I'm like, wait a minute. The episode is, are we going to find something that brings the left and the right together again, and we could stop hating each other? It could be the conservatives, baby.
Welcome to the Upsiders. Welcome, everyone. I am Los, your friendly neighborhood Los, aka the artist formerly known as Los. And as always, I'm joined by...
Mad as hell and not gonna take it anymore.
Oh,
that's right.
You've been warned.
Yeah. Peter Finch. Well, they call me the network.
Okay.
Or Bertram. They call me Bertram too. Sometimes I'm Bertram, but right now I'm mad as hell. For you. I'm mad for you.
Welcome everyone to the show. So yeah, those of you watching on YouTube, listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're coming from. Is there other places they're coming from, Bertram?
Podcasts, they should be listening YouTube? All over. Yeah. Spotify.
Okay. Your radio waves.
Radio
waves. Are we on AM radio yet?
That's right. Sirius XM.
That's right.
The Stranger Things tower. Old Steve Harrington climbed up to the top of the tower to make sure that you can hear us. What was the name? Rockin' Robin. I'm Rockin' Robin.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch Stranger Things. If you don't, you should.
This is your first time. Yeah. This is your first time. Welcome here at the Upsiders. We take a look at everything going on out there, the issues that we may be facing today, but shifting our focus to those.
Go back and listen to our old episodes.
To those working on solutions.
Sorry, Los, so bad.
Yeah, whether those are individuals or organizations, they're helping making the world better than we found it. So we want to highlight and celebrate them. So that's what this show is all about. So hence the name, The Upsiders, on the upside.
Fix your feed.
Yeah, fix it.
Their feed.
Make sure the algorithm knows that we exist. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Put your notifications on so you know when a new episode comes out. And same thing on the podcast front. Subscribe, add, however because I know Apple and Spotify work a little different. Follow us, whatever the case may be. And yeah, hopefully you like today's show and look forward to the rest that we have here.
Sorry, Los, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say maybe we're just having some connection issues because there's like an overlap. But one of the things that I think about is, while we were putting together our research for this episode, I just want to help you guys not only fix your algorithm, but teach you about some things that you might not know about that's good in the world, that fix some problems, because everybody likes to talk about problems, but nobody wants to talk about the solutions. And I'm dumber than all of you. Okay, I'm the dumbest man that maybe you've ever met. Los is a Harvard law professor in his spare time.
No,
Los has multiple doctorates, if you don't know that. And for me, today's stuff, I'm no expert, as you'll see in the comment sections, most likely on some of these videos. But I'm no expert. All I did was just a little bit of research just to learn about something. So let's do this together. Let's change our feed. Let's talk about some solutions. Let's be solution-based, and let's get there together. Thank you, Los. Man, you're so handsome and smart and wonderful. And thanks for joining us. I'm sorry I'm interrupting you.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks, Bertram. That was a great explanation of what we do. Summary. So today we'll get into it, and there's a specific person of interest who's fighting on behalf of what we call trust busting, Bertram.
Yeah.
Who is that person?
Andrew Carnegie.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm just
Try again.
kidding. Yeah, Lina Khan. So I didn't know. Man, Los, how long have you known who Lina Khan is?
When she was appointed
Oh, so
FTC chair.
at the start of the Biden administration?
Yeah, or when there were musings about her before, like, yeah, during the campaign, but yeah.
I found out about her when I had a long conversation months ago, and I was talking about my love of Teddy Roosevelt and trust busting and Taft, President William Howard Taft, and what do we need, especially because in the news all the time, there's all these acquisitions, right? You probably been following along if you're listening to this about Paramount and the Netflix merger and all these gigantic corporations constantly buying one another, and for me, it's very frustrating. And so I try and say, what is the solution to all this? How do we bring Teddy Roosevelt back? Well, here's some people who are doing that work right now. Lina Khan's probably number one is the big trust buster. So I've been really listening to a lot of Lina Khan podcasts.
Who exactly is she though?
So Lina Khan, you mentioned, was the former FTC chair from 2021 to 2025. Currently, you asked before the podcast, what is Lina Khan doing now? Because obviously, when Donald Trump took over, anybody who's never mind. But Lena is now an associate professor at Columbia Law School. While she was a student at Yale, she became known for her work in antitrust competition law after publishing the essay Amazon's Antitrust Paradox. And so she is very big into breaking up a lot of corporate monopolies and trying to administer fairness in business competition. How's
Mhm.
that?
Sure. Yeah, that's great. And that kind of represents what the FTC that you mentioned, what they actually do. So,
Yeah.
yeah, right? The Federal Trade Commission, for those who don't know.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Its principal mission is the enforcement of civil antitrust laws and the promotion of consumer protection. So we'll get into trusts in a minute with some of our historical work, but right now they're big into breaking up some of these antitrust issues and just making sure everybody's competing fairly, that the little guy has a shot. Wouldn't you say?
Little guy, but even middle guys, even larger guys, right?
Yeah.
It's about creating, yeah, because you could have you mentioned Paramount, but I think it's fact check. I think it's Warner Brothers, right? Warner Brothers Discovery, who are, as of this date, being rumored to be bought by Netflix for a deal, I think upwards of 80 something $billion. But so what that would mean for everyone who just doesn't care about who Warner Brothers Discovery is and Netflix as a company is that means HBO Max that you have as a separate streaming
Uh-huh.
service will, if this deal goes through, be absorbed into the Netflix app. So all the content you have, which might sound great on its face, but then that means that you're probably going to be paying more for Netflix because they're like, hey, we have everything that was on HBO before. Let's hike up
Mhm.
the price by $10. Before you know it, everyone's going to be paying $40 a month for
Yeah.
Netflix. When what used to happen was, yeah, you paid remember when Netflix was like $8.99.
I sure do. Man, it was nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
did you hear about Xbox Game Pass?
yeah, that's what you could play like online, right?
Yeah,
Like
so
cloud service. Yeah.
and I think that's why I wanted to do this episode too, Los, is everybody is hiking up prices everywhere. And this Xbox Game Pass recently, I've had Xbox Game Pass for many years, Los, and I play with all my friends and you get to test out new games, and it was great. And they increased their price from $20 a month to $30 a month. Just here's an extra $10. Why? No, I don't know. We could charge it. Are you going to give me anything better? Are you going to increase your service? Like, what are you doing better to throw on another $10 per month? And the answer is nothing, Lowe's. You're going to pay that. And so a lot of people are canceling their Xbox subscriptions Me, I canceled mine, so it's the first time in many, many years that I am not actively having like a gaming life. Essentially, it killed video games for me. Lows these prices, so I just want to see who is trying to knock prices down, man. Why are people uh just getting priced out of everything? And that's with the Netflix, right? Is the more these big companies come together and buy up more of the market and horizontal integration and vertical integration, which we'll get into.
Yeah, it could be pretty frustrating when you're aware of what's going on, right? Um, but those who aren't aware, it's mainly, yeah, the price that really is noticeable, right? When you go somewhere and you're like, why are things so expensive? You've explained some of the reasons why they get that way. So,
Yeah.
yeah, when it comes to monopolies, right? So you mentioned that's why it's a bad thing because it just takes control of everything and you're the only shop in town, aka like
Yeah.
Walmart when we were growing up. That was a big thing. Now no one thinks about Walmart because it's become so normalized, right? So when we
Ubiquitous.
think of like Amazon or Google, right? There's sure in theory you could buy stuff somewhere else or you could search somewhere else, but like where are you more likely to go? Google, right? You're looking for something real quick. Maybe you don't even first end up shopping on or you don't end up shopping at Amazon, but it's like the first place you go when you're thinking of how much this stuff costs and stuff like that. That makes them money too because they make money off of ads and revenue and clicks and stuff. So, yeah, just having the only shops in town and creating space for some other people. Maybe there's little guys, maybe they're medium-sized guys, maybe they're larger guys, but more guys and gals and people there at the table. So when it goes to pricing, right? Because that's what we notice as consumers. Um,
Yeah.
what are some practices that we see here? Because you mentioned they just keep
Yeah.
hiking the price up. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, get into tell me more about that.
Absolutely. And when you mentioned the thing about Amazon, if the people go into the show notes, they will go and see the Amazon's antitrust paradox that was written for the Yale Law Journal for Lina Khan. So go take a look at that. I think that's pretty much what put her on the map.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. And so some of those things that you said that companies are doing, I feel like one of the big ones is predatory pricing that you were just talking about. That is when you temporarily lower the price below the cost in a specific geographic area to drive a local competitor out of business and then raise prices back up once the competition is gone. And I noticed that was Netflix's business model, right? I think I remember reading years ago that is specifically how they tried to get into the game. Is that right?
Well, yeah, because when you think of how Netflix started, right? It was a mail service where you get not like a mail a mail service like guys. No, like MAIL, like the post office. You would order DVDs and they would be mailed to you. And that was at a price that was much lower than
Yeah.
see, we're old men. So how it used to be is when you wanted to like rent a movie, because they don't really do that anymore. But when you wanted
Yeah.
to rent a movie, you
Oh
would
no, Amazon does
drive
that.
you would drive all the way to your nearby what do they call those things that I hate? Strip malls.
Blockbuster.
You
Oh,
go
I
to
hate strip malls too.
your very yeah, your the strip mall in town, which would uh contain a Blockbuster video and or a Hollywood video if you were a contrarian. Um but
You.
yeah, you go into a shop and they just
Is
have a bunch of
Hollywood Video still
DVDs.
around?
I don't know.
How come everybody talks about Blockbuster? Oh, poor Blockbuster. Yeah, but what happened to Hollywood Video? Maybe they went out before that. How come we can't say
Uh,
Blockbuster and Hollywood Video?
No, that was Blockbuster. But yeah, Blockbuster was a place where they just had movies on the wall and you could decide what you wanted to oh man. focus was out of there. You could decide what movie you wanted, and depending on how nice your parents were, you could either get like 1 movie, 2 movies, 3 movies, and then there'd be like a return date. And if you didn't return the movies on time, then there'd be a late fee. And so that was one of Netflix's biggest things. Like, hey, you go to this website, choose which DVDs you want, and then return them when you're finished. And if you happen to return them late, we're not going to charge you extra. And that was like a huge undercutting of Blockbuster's business because, okay, it's convenient. I don't have to drive. It's going to get mailed to me. And then I could just take my time watching it. And the only limit is that I can't check out a new one until I return mine, but they're not going to penalize me for it's been a month. What was the window, by the way, Bertram, for returning a video to Blockbuster? Do you know? You don't have to. It's
7
not a trick
days.
question. Just curious.
7
Maybe it
days.
was like
7
a
days. I
week,
think.
right?
We're new releases were 2 days.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You get a new release for 2 days. Also, hey, by the way, I found out Hollywood Video went out because there was a hostile takeover for Blockbuster.
Oh, really? Oh,
So they got what they deserved, Blockbuster, then.
monopolies.
Yeah.
And one of the co-founders, Reed Hastings of Netflix, he tells this story where I don't know the veracity of it, but he offered Blockbuster to buy them, and I think Blockbuster declined or something like that. And yeah, but then eventually it just undercut Blockbuster's business so much that ultimately they had to, it was almost like a BlackBerry iPhone thing. It's like, hey, we do this thing this way. We like that. Consumers like that. We're going to stick to our guns. And then, yeah, they started their own mail service. Again, MAIL, not mail. And it just wasn't compelling enough. At that point, you spoke of the word ubiquitous. Netflix was ubiquitous when it came into that. And it didn't even matter that when you think of, okay, they're going to mail me a movie, people didn't even care that it took like 3 to 5 days to receive your movie. Like they made it seem as if like the convenience of not having to drive to Blockbuster was like, you know, that wasn't even the thing that you would worry about driving. You just get this at your leisure, and it doesn't matter how long it takes you to watch the movie. You just have it there. There were so many actual benefits that Blockbuster had over Netflix that just became moot because Netflix just showed how compelling they could be to the consumer. Yeah, like because I remember new releases were never on Netflix. You were just having like older stuff pop up, and people still didn't care. Still didn't care. I think what they cared about the most, that stuck around the most, was like Redbox. And for those who don't know, Redbox was places like at your grocery store, there'd be a kiosk, and you would rent a DVD from there, and you'd have like a few days to bring that back. Netflix even put them out. Especially, it became game over when Netflix got into the business of streaming. That was streaming service. That was like huge. And yeah, ultimately, now Gen Z Gen Z is nostalgic, but Gen Alpha, they won't know what Blockbuster was. And thanks to Netflix, undercutting.
Man, a lot of these bigger companies can sell at a loss for, a limited time and force their competitor out of business that way. Cause, some of these mom and pop shops are a few months out of declaring bankruptcy at any given time, right? As COVID showed us, right? A couple months of not bringing in any income and they're immediately gone. So it's definitely a business model where we have to protect a lot of small business owners from predatory pricing. And so there's a lot of accusations when anytime you have some of these big corporations, right, they can play to their advantage. Outside of predatory pricing, there was some of the things that like the Rockefellers did back in the day with Standard Oil, was that Standard Oil would secretly negotiate with railroad companies for deeply discounted freight rates. And then even worse, they would receive money on every barrel of oil shipped by its competitors. So that meant that the more the rivals shipped, the more money Rockefeller made. Those are rebates and drawbacks. So I put a link to the show notes about those. And then the biggest one that we're going to talk about is trusts, which is a legal arrangement where a group of companies transfer control of their stock to a single group of trustees. And this creates one giant company, which is the trust, and then that controls the entire industry, which is circumventing anti-monopoly laws, and this is what the government sued to break up. So that's something that Lina Khan tries to do a lot, and if you watch any of her videos that are in the show notes, if you check out the Jon Stewart interview that she did, she talks a lot about how that seems to be a lot of her mission, especially when she was with the FTC, is, how do I investigate trusts? How do I bust them up? How do I make sure that smaller companies and the consumer are protected from things like predatory pricing, from things like trusts, from some of these shady business deals that these big corporations can push.
Absolutely. And yeah, so on to Lina Khan, right?
Yeah.
What I heard she's part of some movement. Tell us about this. She's the leader of a certain movement.
And maybe we need to get into our upsiders, our hero of the week, our upsider of the week.
Oh yeah.
So Lina Khan
here.
Yeah, man. Lina Khan is the intellectual leader of the new Brandeis Movement, and her work fundamentally changed the decades-old legal standard that said a merger is only illegal if it harms the consumer by raising prices immediately. Because a lot of times throughout United States history, the issue is that if these monopolies, what they're looking for is, do they raise prices immediately for the consumer? That's the definition of a monopoly. That's what we're looking at breaking up. And what the new Brandeis movement pushes is it's not just about raising prices on the consumer immediately. That's one thing, but there's a lot of other harmful issues. And we started with predatory pricing, things like that we talked about. And so she really started to kind of push back with the new Brandeis movement, which that takes us, let me go down to my notes. That takes us to our unsung hero of the upside. Los, do you know who Louis Brandeis is?
Yeah. That was a Supreme Court justice.
Yes.
Back in when they had, these antitrust was fundamental in some of these decisions that were made. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did a lot of research on Louis Brandeis because I was talking about how I'm a Teddy Roosevelt fan and I like Taft, and was looking into what sort of things were going around, what sort of things were going on during that time. So he was a justice of the Supreme Court from 1916 to 1939. They named Brandeis University after him. That's where that name comes from. He was nicknamed the People's Lawyer, and he was already talking about the concentration of corporate power before the New Deal came along. He had a lot of different ideas necessarily than Teddy Roosevelt and Taft. Let me pull that up. He was working during the 1912 presidential race, which was between Roosevelt, Wilson, and Taft. You remember that election?
Yeah.
Oh, it's one of my least favorites, Los, because, Teddy Roosevelt and Taft split the vote on each other, and then racist Woodrow Wilson won.
Bull Moose Party.
Yes.
That was Teddy Roosevelt.
And all three of the candidates in the election of the 1912 talked about the importance of restraining monopolies. Sidebar, I did put in the show notes that way back in the Revolutionary War days, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison were also writing about how do we include anti-monopolies in the U.S. Constitution. Go back and listen to our episode that we did on the 28th Amendment and Constitution a few weeks ago. So this is a conversation that has been around for the entirety of United States history, right? As we're talking about what do we do with these monopolies. And so what I thought was interesting with Louis Brandeis and Roosevelt and Wilson and Taft is that they all disagreed about how corporate power can be checked. So Taft wanted to prosecute the banks by beefing up trust reinforcement. Roosevelt wanted to create strong regulatory bodies like the Interstate Commerce Commission to regulate banks. And then Wilson, with the help of Brandeis, who was the economic advisor for Wilson, he wanted to break up the banks and the web of financial interests that they controlled. And so when Wilson won the White House, Brandeis helped shape the reforms of his administration. So, Brandeis comes in, he's working with the Wilson administration, and his whole thing was this idea of the curse of bigness. How do we make sure? I think when I think of the curse of big business, I think of too big to fail.
So, too big to fail is this idea that if an institution no longer exists, it would become, the results would be so catastrophic that whether it's a economy or society at large could not sustain that because of just the impact. So a good example of that would be during the 2008 financial crisis, where a bunch of little banks, hedge funds, firms like that, your Bear Stearns, your Lehman Brothers, those were collapsing, but at the same time, your JP Morgan Chases, your Cities, your Bank of Americas, like they were in trouble as well. And so if the way that the Federal Reserve saw it was, if we don't help them out, then ATMs won't work and basically everyone will lose their homes, stuff like that. So this idea became, they're too big to fail. And so we're not going to let them fail. Same with the auto companies of the time. Same era. We bailed out Chevy. We bailed out what is now known as Stellantis, which were the Jeep, Chrysler, and Jeep, Chrysler, and Dodge brands. Yeah, bailed them out. Ford did not get bailed out, by the way. But yeah, some of the big heavy hitters, so much so that the government actually owned GM for a time because they were in such bad shape and
really
too big to fail.
Man. Yeah. And with that, to build off what you just said, Brandeis said that, oftentimes a lot of these big businesses don't become more efficient. They tend to become more unwieldy, bureaucratic, inefficient, and their size is merely hiding some of the internal problems. And specifically, he wrote a 1914 essay called Other People's Money and How the Bankers Use It. And he talked about how investment bankers tend to use these trusts, going back to some of these issues that trust busting, and they don't use trust to create better companies. They use it to gain financial control over the economy, and that puts the entire system at risk. So that's what we relate as too big to fail today. So Brandeis was a speaker. He was anti-corruption. He talked a lot about industrial liberty and specifically checks and balances of the government, right? Is that the separation of powers, we have to make sure that economic power is split evenly somewhat so that we can't concentrate economic power like with the president, never mind. I won't say what I want to say about the current one. Maybe how he thinks the president has more power than he actually should. What I really like, Los, is that Brandeis pushed that the everyday experience of power for most citizens comes from their economic lives. Examples like negotiating pay with your employer, dealing with corporations. And when one or a few massive companies control those relationships, individuals lose their industrial liberty and become subservient to corporate autocracy. And I think it's really important for us to be able to flex that economic power, not only as an individual, but on a community level. And Brandeis was big on pushing like the power of an economic community, of your economic neighborhoods, city planning, things like that. And so what I like about Brandeis is that, he all of these things we're still talking about today, and Lina Khan has taken over a lot of that as the new Brandeis champion. I'm curious what your thought is on all of that, because as you know, Los is a doctor of economics, a Milton Friedman economist. I'm curious, do you push back on that? Is that something you agree with? This this Brandeis take on economics.
No, not necessarily. Yeah, which yeah, I was a fan of Teddy Roosevelt, antitrust movements, which contrasts what many on the Chicago or classical school of economics would think, that the free market reigns supreme. But my where I differ is that yeah, with the free market economics, which is in step with antitrust and some of those areas, there is we're not always act there's not always good actors, right? And we don't always think in our own interest. And so these predictable behaviors that you assume the free market would follow, they just don't, because not everyone's working in step the way that you would expect them to. So that results in, yeah, things like trust being built up, or colluding, or these mergers and acquisitions that result in um yeah, consumers getting less bang for their buck, and lower quality goods and services. So yeah, I'm in theory also against monopolies and stuff like that. I
Uh,
do, sometimes I'm a little skeptical times, because I'm like, Google really is better in most cases, right? Some monopolies kinda do make sense. But when it comes to, and yeah, with Google, it's like the consumer, in many cases, not all, in many cases, benefits, right? But there is a point where it gets too big, because at this point, why is Google and YouTube under the same umbrella, right? Like, why can't you
yeah.
just split them up, right? Why is, Amazon and Amazon's cloud services and Amazon's um retail business, e-commerce business, why are they still the same company? They could clearly operate separately. So this
Hmm.
term with antitrust comes with breaking up companies, which I think, you'll get into, and you've alluded to, with back in the 1900s with Standard Oil, and um,
Yeah.
you know, the Bell Company, which ultimately became AT&T, and T, and a bunch of others, stuff like that.
Man, bringing up the Bell Company on this, you're
Hey,
turning
man,
back the clock, man. Are you a time
you
traveler?
started it. You started it. So
You would
going
have
back
you
to
would have
that
fit in back
era,
there.
right?
Yeah. And maybe man, I could sit here and talk about the progressive era for another 20 minutes, but I don't think that's the purpose of this podcast. So I think you and I have been talking about pushing out some more content, some explainers, and I think maybe one of the first ones we need is on the progressive era, which is this time that we were just talking about. Because there was so essentially 100 years ago, they were in the same situation that we were in, right? Especially, before that we had the Gilded Age, which some people are talking about us being in a second Gilded Age right now. And so it's essentially the progressive era was when a lot of the middle class citizens, your lawyers and doctors and teachers and all that, they rejected the idea of social Darwinism, right? That everybody's out for themselves, that, poverty and inequity and inequality were natural, and they believed that human effort, science, and a stronger, more accountable government could solve society's deepest problems. I think we need to do a video and talk about some of the investigative journalists at that time, the social workers, the political leaders, and the women's groups and activists that kind of made everything possible. But I want to talk about maybe some of the villains that were fighting all these good people during that time, and that we would point to our old the giants, right? Rockefeller with Standard Oil, Andrew Carnegie with steel, and JP Morgan with finance. They had the monopolies at this time that everybody was fighting with. And so I wanted to talk about what were some of the ways that they were able to create their monopolies, and how do we see those exact same things today that Lina Khan is trying to target. And so going back to what you just said about Google, they had well, where did I have it at? I just had it up here. Yeah. Oh, vertical integration, right? So this idea that Andrew Carnegie was able to have the steel company, steel production, and essentially he controlled everything from the mine to market. So controlling every step of the production process, fronting raw materials to distribution, cutting out middlemen. His steel empire was a perfect example of how do you own the iron ore mines, the coal fields, the ships and rail yards, and transported the materials and the steel mill themselves. One thing I thought about was that excellent movie Founder with all about Ray Kroc and McDonald's, right? Is
Oh
that
yeah,
how
yeah.
did how clever it was that Ray Kroc said, why don't I own the land that McDonald's is on too? I'm going to be in the real estate business. And to me, that was somewhat of an Andrew Carnegie thing. But you think about Amazon, you think about Google, how their goal with vertical integration is how do I own, from mine to market. I want to own every part of the process. And that way, like I don't need to rely on anybody else. I have distribution, I have all those things. Amazon, right?
Because even when you break it up, you're like, I still have all these other pieces too.
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
Apple controls the operating system and the distribution channel with the App Store, so they force developers to adhere to their rules, like a mandatory 15 to 30% commission, and they compete with Apple's own pre-installed apps and services.
mhm.
Everything on this guy, they own everything on this guy. They got the App Store, they got the apps, they got everything. They listen to me talk all the time. They own the airwaves around me.
Yeah. They call that when Apple copies or takes services from existing apps. There's a term for that. It's called Sherlocking. And it just originates. There was this application called Sherlock. It helps you find stuff on your computer. And then Apple came out with Finder on your computer. So it in theory, rendered Sherlock obsolete. And so then came that term Sherlocking. And so when there's a thing that your phone didn't used to do, where in the next update it can, but that was already possible by another app. Um, we think of like AirTags, right? AirTags came out.
Yeah.
Before that, there was Tile. It was one of those things you put on your
Sure.
keychain, you could find your stuff. AirTag came along and it's like, okay, now it's even more integrated into your operating system. So there were just some features that Tile didn't have access to. And so again, they got Sherlock.
I think of all the fitness stuff too. Was I used to have all these different fitness apps. I'm gonna use my fitness pal. I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna use that. And then slowly over time, Apple just took all of them. They took all of those. If you go into the health app and the fitness app, there's like 30 different apps that they put out of business with that. How is that legal, Los?
So the way Apple puts it, or the Apple's case is that, hey, anyone could do it, like, hey, you could sell your apps, you could have your apps as web apps, right? Where you're not selling on the App Store. It's just you go on a website and then the app works from there. Or hey, we're not stopping anyone from building their own operating system, their own
Oh
phones.
yeah.
Why don't you just do that? Um, so yeah, that's basically how they're able to get around that. It's like we don't, this isn't just like a de facto, space where you could buy stuff. You could always go other places. So why do you think what we're doing is restrictive in any sense?
Well, it
Which
also looks like
there's already been
Apple.
some
Yeah.
decisions that have gone against that, especially in Europe, but even here in the US, when it comes to selling stuff. Yeah.
Well, it looks like Apple, not everyone can make their own app because Apple receives government subsidies, state and local subsidies, a large campus in North Carolina. Like, if you're getting some of these things from the government, man, that's us taking care of
Well,
you. So
yeah, and when you think of how hard is it if we both decided we want to create our own phone and we want it to be not Android, not iOS. We
Linux.
want Bertram OS. We want the phone
Oh,
to run on Bertram OS. Can
yeah.
you imagine how much resources we would need to make that happen? Not just the phone, which probably costs like hundreds of millions of dollars to launch a phone, just one phone. Not on top of that, we'd have to release our own operating system where, that would cost its own millions of dollars. Um, you know, make partnerships with phone companies so your phone can have service. Like the the cost of technology is making this idea of monopolies even more commonplace because it's just seen as like, why would anyone try to create some of the things that these corporations do?
Well, and even if we were able to finally get this phone launched, they'd just sue
Yeah.
us and shut it down immediately. We don't have the money to fight them in court because they would
Or
come after us.
or maybe we're a little bit successful, but it's like now to grow, it's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
And then Apple just comes along and says, "Hey, we're going to give $5 billion. How does that sound? I know you're not even grossing $1 billion. We believe in your product, so we're gonna give you 5 billion to be absorbed by us. And hey, you can have all this freedom. Um, you know, you'll become Apple employees, but you'll be able to work on these projects a little more and just clear your head." And so it just seems at that point stupid that we wouldn't take $5 billion when we haven't even cracked the billion yet. And so
Yeah.
then it's that big guy eating up the little guy. Uh, but if we fight them and say no, and we're not successful in taking a significant share of the market, then we're going to be out of business. And so
Yeah.
that's how that works.
One talking about that gets us into the other type of integration, horizontal integration, which is vertical was how do you own all parts of the process. Horizontal is how does you own everything in
Everything.
everything in a particular industry, and so that was Rockefeller with Standard Oil. Horizontal integration is when you control 90% of an industry. So you buy up or you eliminate all competing businesses. You got rid of the Bertram iOS. And when Rockefeller controlled all the oil refineries, he could dictate the price to oil producers and consumers. And so he had monopoly power there. I think of today Meta, Facebook, right?
Yeah.
They were very good at just acquiring rivals, your Instagram, WhatsApp. And so critics argue that this is done to remove future competition and consolidate a near monopoly over social networking and communications rather than just for pure product integration.
Yeah. Yeah. And what we're seeing, yeah, that's a great example. It's just funny how like shameless Instagram is and just like copying everything that all these other social medias. Yeah, I remember
Oh, yeah.
when stories weren't even that was just something that happened in Snapchat and Instagram just out of nowhere. Instagram stories. Yeah, it's the same thing. So what? You know? Um, they recently did that 2 years ago with formerly known as Twitter, which is now just one letter. I don't want to get into that, but they
It's Twitter,
created
man.
their
It's Twitter.
yeah, they created their own Twitter, Threads. Yeah. Yeah, it's the same. So what?
It's
So
dumb.
yeah.
I hate it too. Um, and I think that gets us into our word of the week for all the man. We're gonna get sued. We're gonna get sued by all these companies, man. Hey, YouTube's pretty good. Hey, YouTube,
Yeah.
please don't sue us.
So yeah, what is the word of the week?
Our word of the week is monopsony, which I
What?
didn't know
Is
was
that
a
a
word,
typo?
Los. Yeah, I thought, well, no, what's a monopsony? That's probably some dumb thing that's trying to be like a monopoly, right? So a monopoly is when essentially you have one seller in the market, right? They control everything, and you have to buy from them. Okay, I think about you go to the grocery store, right? And it looks like there's a lot of different companies being represented at the grocery store. Like, hey, look at all these different types of cereal. Oh man, you have so many options. In reality, it's a monopoly, right? It's like there's like one or two corporations that are selling all of that stuff.
Another good example would be we talk about Amazon. You're like, wait, gross, isn't Los? not Carlos. My mom calls me that. Um, Los, weren't you
Mr.
just saying
Carlos.
Amazon could be a monopoly? But
Yeah.
there is a stronger case that they are a monopsony because of the
Yes.
marketplace that they when you're a vendor and you want to sell stuff, how many different places can you go to actually sell that stuff? No,
Yeah.
it's Amazon. And that's just the way that things are sold is the way that Amazon operates. Um, and so that's more of a no because when you look at the market share for e-commerce, Amazon isn't even there. It's like Walmart, who's actually like the leader in the market space. Um, but when it comes to, yeah, I'm a vendor, I'm just making this stuff that I do want to sell online to as many people as possible. The only way to do that is upload it to Amazon and sell it, basically. Yeah. Unless you wanted
Yeah.
to just have your website that no one knows about. And yeah.
And so, yeah, so a monopoly is when there is only one seller. Monopsony is when there is only one buyer, which you can imagine. I think of houses, right? If you only have one buyer, then the seller has really low bargaining power. I think about how is that BlackRock that's going around and buying up everybody's houses? So, like,
Yes, but yeah, they're buying up houses, but Yimby Los over here would argue that that's just a red herring of NIMBYs using excuses to not build more housing because they're just
mm,
pointing out the fact that, oh, look, if BlackRock wasn't buying all these houses, we wouldn't have such a shortage. And my counter argument to that is w- BlackRock wouldn't be buying if there wasn't a scarcity of houses on the market because it wouldn't have a financial benefit to them. But anyway, don't want to get into that tangent. We're focusing on the upside here.
sure, absolutely. And so monopolies also end up, not, I said low bargain power for sellers. It also creates market inefficiencies, which ends up forcing producers to cut wages. And then you have limited innovation when you only have one buyer. It can be caused by things like physical isolation. If you're geographically isolated or transportation costs are high, that's going to limit the number of potential buyers and make it difficult for competitors to enter the market. Maybe there's limited product demand, barriers to entry, government requirements. All of those things could limit an industry to one particular buyer and possibly create a monopsony. And one specifically in the U.S. labor market, they talk about how the technology engineering market is an example because it ends up suppressing wages. There's only a few large tech companies in the market requiring engineers, and so a lot of the major players in the tech boom have been accused of conspiring together on wages to minimize labor costs so that the major tech companies can generate higher profits. So that is the example of a monopsony. Our word of the week. I learned
Awesome.
something new, and
Word of
hopefully
the
so
week.
did you.
Yeah. Thank you, Bertram, for giving us the word of the week. But yeah. So Lina Khan, right? So
Yeah.
how does how does she represent like the future where we're going from here?
Well, I think first of all, I'm sad that she wasn't born inside this country because I'd be pushing for Lina Khan for
Yeah.
president, right? But to me, it seems similar in that, Brandeis was able to advise Wilson and by proxy Taft and Roosevelt and create that policy. I think that Lina Khan is sort of the intellectual leader of this new Brandeis movement, right? And one example is that, I saw her name. I love seeing her name come up in things that I believe in. With Zohran Mamdani becoming the mayor of New York City, Lina Khan was
Mhm.
appointed to be a part of his transition team. And so she is working with him. I also heard somebody else's name, Shahana Hanif, that aligned with the movement in with the New York City. So right now, it looks like she's focused on city level efforts to promote local competition. New York City with Mamdani is exploring ways to give preference to small local businesses over giant national chains for city contracts, and she's looking into zoning and licensing reforms so that it's easier for small businesses to compete against national change. So I'm very curious. I think you and I have both been watching New York City and the mayoral campaign closely and seeing what sort of things could happen with this big experiment of here's Mamdani in New York City with Lina making the transition. I'm going to take a look and see what's going to happen to the economy of that city. Is it going to be a Teddy Roosevelt situation where he comes in and helps create all this reform for a city and it elevates him? I'm curious where she's going to go next.
Yeah, same. The future's bright because she's young too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she's like 36, 37, something like that.
Man, she's got a lot left in the tank, like WWE wrestler Mark Henry. That's the world's strongest man, Los.
Yeah, wow.
The fact that
she even got that position at such a young age is very promising, and she was very effective. Wasn't a DEI hire, as the right wingers would argue.
Oh, well, and there was talk. I think you mentioned it when we talked about this episode. Is that she tends to even. She could potentially unite the populist left and the populist right. I think it was you who told me about the phrase that they're in the Republicans tend to gravitate toward her, and they're called the conservatives.
No, I did not mention that, but yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah, and so I was looking that up for the episode because I'm like, wait a minute. The upside is, are we going to find something that brings the left and the right together again and we could stop hating each other? It could be the conservatives, baby.
It's distrust in corporations, which we saw earlier in the year in different circumstances with the Luigi situation. But yeah, I think that is a good path forward that both sides of the political spectrum can agree upon, is the overreach, the influence of corporations, and now the dangers of monopolies and even monopsonies, and what we could do about it. So
yeah,
there's
and
some
we
hope
see
there.
that
There's an upside.
It's creating fractures in both political parties, right? As the Democrats are realizing that, hey, these institutional Democrats are not actually for the people with some of these policies, and they tend to be more corporate Democrats. And then the right are starting to fracture, and we have people saying, hey, we have some populist agenda here. We want to make sure that these people are not being taken advantage of by these corporations. And there's some distrust and some fracturing happening on both sides. So hopefully it could lead to, some of us coming back together again. That's the upside.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the upside. So Bertram, do you have a final word here?
Man, just go check out Lina Khan and let's see what she could do next, and make sure that you read her article from the show notes, and check out the show notes. There's great stuff in there, and we need to talk some more about all of these things. There's a lot more to cover.
Great. Well, yeah, I think that's it. So. But wait, there is more. We have our segments. The reality check. So
okay,
you thought we were done, people.
I thought we'd be done. Okay, Los, we're gonna put a minute on the clock. This is our reality check. I'm gonna ask. Los has 60 seconds to answer 5 statements on whether it's a myth or whether it's reality, and just give a quick, short explanation of why he thinks that. Los, 60 seconds on the clock. Are you ready?
Yeah, think so.
Okay. Here we go. Number 1, claim. The only reason to break up a monopoly is if it raises prices for consumers.
That's a myth. Oh, and the reason for that is because it could also stifle innovation. It could also jeopardize like people's jobs, and also not pay them as much. It makes the society or in the industry a little less industrious, people a little less industrious. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons there.
Very good. Claim number 2: the U.S. government has not broken up a major monopoly since the 1980s.
Since the 1980s?
Yeah.
I think I don't know this for sure, but I think that's a myth. That just sounds like such a long time ago. I think we've done stuff more recently than that.
Yes, absolutely. The GOJ successfully broke up AT&T, splitting it into some smaller regional companies, leading to an explosion of competition in telecommunications. 3: Lina Khan is the first person in decades to actively argue that big tech should be broken up.
No, that's been an argument for some time. It's getting louder and louder, and I think she was a person in the right position to fight that on an institutional level. But yeah, there's been a lot of calls, I think, yeah, in the
Yes,
past. Yeah, yeah,
specifically a major antitrust suit against Microsoft is a big
that's
one.
right. The
Uh, when
90s.
a
Yeah,
when a monopoly controls an industry, it hurts workers by holding down wages.
of course. Yeah, we talked about that in the first one, right?
Yes. And then, lastly, if a merger doesn't get blocked by the government, it means the merger is legal and fair.
Yeah, heck no. Hell no. That's a myth. Come on, that's just common sense.
Only a tiny percentage of mergers are blocked by the FTC or the DOJ, largely due to resource constraints and the high legal burden of proof. Many mergers that proceed may still harm competition. It always comes down to money, Los. These corporations got all this money. Hey, you won.
Follow the money.
Congratulations,
Yeah,
Los. As usual, you're 5 for 5. I don't know if you got it done in a minute, but I forgot to start a
I don't know.
timer.
But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. That was a great way to cap off the show. Make sure to subscribe, follow, listen to the podcast, watch the podcast, tell your family, friends, loved ones, worst enemies about us. And Bertram, you have anything?
Man, I'm just so
Right?
proud of you. You do such a great job,
Oh,
man.
stop. Oh,
You walk on water.
oh, that is definitely not true. But we will definitely see you on the other side. On behalf of Bertram, I'm Los. We won't just see you on the other side. We'll see you on the upside. See you soon. Have a good one.